much for having me. Is my mic on, working? Can't tell. But I can probably talk loud enough for you guys to hear me. Just to get started, I'm assuming most of you guys are from Florida. Is that true? Everybody from Florida, raise your hand. Anybody not from Florida? Do you want to yell out where you guys are from? Maryland? Okay. Massachusetts? Okay. We'll talk about both those states later. Virginia? Okay.
South Carolina?
South Carolina, great. So I'm very happy to be here. Done a few of Lee's events and found them a great opportunity to share our data, and it fits very well with this audience. You guys are really focused on the distressed market. So I'm going to jump in. We're going to talk. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about RealtyTrack. How many of you guys have heard of RealtyTrack? Just to make sure.
Oh yeah.
How many have used RealtyTrack as a service? Okay, maybe about a third. I'm guessing. So can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Talk about RealtyTrack a little bit. How long will the short sale surge last? Think about that question. I want to get some answers before I give my answer. Zombie foreclosures we'll talk about just because it's fun to say zombie foreclosures. Disappearing REOs. Flipping and institutional investors, which is a different side of the market that we are seeing. And I think, wow, that is an opportunity for you all that you may or may not be missing, but I want to talk about that. Where we're seeing underwater convert to equity, and there is this transition happening, and how you guys can catch that wave ahead of it happening. And then I just added this in today with the recent change from HUD talking about now people who have done a short sale or foreclosure or bankruptcy can qualify for a loan now within 1 year, 12 months, rather than 36 months as it was before. So that's the whole idea of Boomerang Buyers, and we'll talk about some opportunities there. A little bit about RealtyTrack. Our data, the core of our data is the foreclosure data that we collect. We have people in Maryland, Massachusetts, we have people in Florida who are going out and collecting these public foreclosure documents from the county recorders, county clerks, wherever they're filed. But we started doing that in 1996. Since then, we have added, I don't know what the word is, a cornucopia, a plethora of data around that foreclosure data. We have valuation, we have property characteristics, we have MLS data, sales and loan data. You know, we have all 45 million outstanding loans out there, so we can tell you how many outstanding loans a property has, and how much, what the position is of those loans, and how much equity that property has. MLS, we can tell you whether that foreclosure property or pre-foreclosure property is already listed for sale or not. Neighborhood and local data, we acquired a company called HomeFacts last year. And that is really exciting and just pulls in everything. If you go to homefacts.com, if you guys haven't been there, that's a great place to go. It's totally free. And your clients can go there too and type in your address. You can see earthquake risk, which may not be a big deal out here, hurricane risk, things like that, neighborhood, school scores, if there's a sex offender on the street, anything that a home buyer would want to know about the neighborhood before they buy a property. We call it pre-diligence. And then economic data, we have rental rates, unemployment data. And now if you haven't been on RealtyTrack for a while, if you go in and type an address, you'll see all this data surrounding the core foreclosure data. All right, this is how we collect it. I've alluded to this already. A lot of it is public record data, MLS, and then just publicly available data sets through HUD and Census, and we're pulling it all together in one place. So how long with the short, that's an incorrect, sorry about that. How long with the short sale surge last? That doesn't make any sense. How long will the short sale surge last? Anybody have any guesses? Months, years?
3 to 5.
3 to 5? 5? Anybody going outside of that safe 3 to 5 range? All right. Well, I'll answer that in a second, but first I want to set the stage where we are with foreclosure activity. This is public publicly reported foreclosure starts. This isn't someone who's delinquent. They did hit their lowest level since December 2005 in June, foreclosure starts across the country. They have actually ticked up just a little bit in the last month. There's still 60,000 foreclosure starts happening across the country a month so far this year. And then as you can see, foreclosure completions or REOs are down as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
What is a foreclosure start?
What is a foreclosure start? That's a great question. It depends on the state. So in Florida, it's a lis pendens. In California, it's a notice of default. In Arizona, there is no separate default notice. And actually, this was a question that came up earlier in the back. Someone was saying, I noticed in some states on Realty Track, there's no we have a pre-foreclosure tab. In some states, there's no pre-foreclosure in the sense that it's a separate notice of default. The first public document is that notice of sale. Now, usually, like in Arizona, that would be the foreclosure start. But functionally, it's very similar to California in that that notice of sale is filed at least 3 months in advance of the actual sale. So it's not like that sale is going to happen right away. So, and by the way, with you guys, I love to do, I don't say this to all my audiences, but love to take questions like that as we're going through because I want to know what you're interested in. So if if it gets too crazy, I'm going to have to put a stop to it, but feel free to pop up and ask questions like that. Does that answer your question? Foreclosure starts?
Well, so does that have a connection with whether it's deed or trust or a mortgage? And whether it needs the court to put them in foreclosure or like a deed of trust in Virginia where they just can automatically foreclose?
Yeah, it ties back to the process in the states. So in Virginia is an example where it's a non-judicial foreclosure process that doesn't have to go through the courts.
Right.
And in Virginia, there is no separate default notice. It's just the notice of sale is filed. And then I forget the exact timeline in Virginia, but I believe it's about 3 months like Arizona when the actual sale occurs down the road. Of course, the sale can get postponed as well. Another way to try to look at how how long will the short sale surge last is looking at underwater borrowers. We still have 11.3 million of those, according to our data nationwide, folks who have an LTV. We put a cushion in here because we want to be conservative in our estimates. Have an LTV of at least 125. That's that 11.3 million. And only 1% of them are in foreclosure right now. So there's this huge pool of borrowers who are underwater, not in foreclosure. And that number has come down. There's from a year ago, there's 1.5 million fewer underwater borrowers than there were back then, but still have 11 million. Home prices ties into this because, and we'll get to the answer, but home prices are important because that's going to help us calculate with these 11 million folks, how soon are home prices going to raise them out of their underwater position. Sorry, I skipped over, and this is a similar thing, but home prices, especially non-distressed home prices, have been increasing now for 15 straight months. These bars are showing year-over-year percentage change in home prices. You see, starts back in January 2010, pretty much all decreasing home prices, and then we're calling the bottom of this market March of 2012, and then April 2012 you start seeing those increases, especially in non-distressed home sales. It's interesting though, distressed sales are not coming back as strong, which may be an opportunity. I mean, these people who are in real trouble may have homes that are not in as good a condition, and the value is not increasing as quickly as those non-distressed properties. So here's one way to answer the question, and it fits right into what someone said. The annual year-over-year percentage change, year-to-date average, is 7%. So far this year, home prices have been rising 7% each month from a year ago. If you assume that continues, it's still going to take 3.5 more years to get those 11 million borrowers out from underwater, and that's because they're underwater by 25% at least or more. So the 3.5 years is at the bottom end of this. It could take longer, and that's assuming home prices continue to rise at 7% a year. This is all national data. Of course, it varies a lot from market to market. So you guys are right. 3 to 5 years on that. I'm going to give you another estimate that's a lot longer on the less conservative side. But short sales are continuing to increase. Now, this doesn't show back in 2010 and 2009, they were actually higher and they came down a little bit. But then we did see this surge in the third quarter of 2012, and I do think that has to do with the national mortgage settlement being finalized and prompting lenders to go ahead and agree to more short sales, as well as at that point, what was billed as the expiration of the Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Act, although it did get extended. So, but they're up 53% compared to a year ago in the second quarter. So short sales are happening in increasing number. Yes?
We have a lot, I don't know if it's in all the other states or the other counties, but we have a lot of people who have made no payment for 3 or 4 years and no foreclosure to get started.
Is this in Florida?
Yeah. Do you have an estimate of what that number is? Do you have any way of knowing what that number is?
How many people are in that point where they've missed payments?
They've missed payments for years.
Yeah, that one's a hard one. I mean, the best, I'd have to defer actually to the Mortgage Bankers Association delinquency survey, which pegs it at just shy of 3 million homeowners who are delinquent nationwide. I believe about half of those, 1.5 million, are seriously delinquent, 90 plus days. So that's the best number we have to go off.
3, 4, 5, 6 years, some people.
Yep, yeah. It's a lot of people. Now this is another way of answering the question, how long will this last? Right now we're on pace in 2013 to do about 700,000 short sales for the year. At that pace, it would take 15 years to get through all those 11 million underwater homeowners. Of course, there's a lot of assumptions there. It's assuming all 11 million will want to sell, and it's not taking into account home prices. So I think the number is between that three. I know it's a wide range, 3.5 and 15 years. It definitely is not going to be 15 years, but it's going to be years. It's not going to be months before all these potential short sales are out of the system. And we're seeing, here's increases in short sales by state. Some of the states with the biggest increases are these states with this longer foreclosure process where there's been these delays. Florida's in the second quarter was up 90% from a year ago. Illinois up 109%. Michigan was interesting, although it's up 126%. But then you look at California, the short sales there are up, but not as much. And I think that's because that's a market where home prices are bouncing much more strongly off the bottom, and it's also a place where there hasn't been as much of a delay in processing these foreclosures. So that is, and by the way, we'll make this a presentation available to you all. So I know some of this stuff may be hard to read from the back. Another thing that could slow down here's some things that could slow down short sales, because I don't want to be just saying, yeah, I want to be honest with the data basically, and so I want to think of as many considerations here. And one of these is rising home prices, which we've already talked about, and the possibility that this could cause more of the lenders to say, no, we're not going to agree to a short sale because we wait 6 months and foreclose and we can get more out of the property because of rising home prices. And rising home prices also give homeowners hope, which should be a good thing, but it doesn't give them that desperation that they need to do a short sale right now. One key, and I'll hit on this later though, is that doesn't mean you should ignore these homeowners. These are homeowners who you can reach out to, and maybe they're not going to do a short sale right now, but that could turn into just a regular standard sale down the road when they do decide to sell and they have equity. And then the national mortgage settlement, it seems like the lenders were in a rush right after that passed to do as many short sales as they could to fulfill some of the requirements under the national mortgage settlement. But they've now done, according to their own self-reporting, around $20 to $25 billion in short sale consumer relief, and it seems like it's slowing down, and they don't have that motivation under the settlement to do those. So, short sales. One way to answer this question is the short sales surge is not going to last forever. So keep that in mind. And we talked about that. So I'm going to pepper in here just some hopefully practical advice about how you can take this trend and use it for yourself. And one way is just, this is foundational to the market, is you need to know your market. And you can do that on RealtyTrack. And if you don't have to be a subscriber, go into RealtyTrack, click on trends there at the top, the trends tab, and type in any market that you want. I typed in Las Vegas. I know that's not applicable to many of you, but you see home price trends. You see distressed versus non-distressed home price trends. You see the inventory of active foreclosures in that market. You see what we call foreclosure discounts, how much foreclosures are selling versus non-foreclosures. And then you see the foreclosure rates compared to the national average, and this is all stuff you could print out and potentially present to a homeowner. You see foreclosure rates by zip code in the heat map over here. And then you see historical trends in foreclosure activity. And you would see something like this similar in Florida that you see in Las Vegas. This blue line is notice of default or notices of default or foreclosure starts. Those are starting to tick back up in the Nevada market, or at least they were. And we would see a similar trend in Florida, that there's this coming rebound in foreclosure starts. But you wouldn't see that in every market. You wouldn't see that in Virginia, actually. And so it's good to go in, know your market, know what's coming down the pike in terms of foreclosure activity. Do you have a question?
Yeah, do you have any data about foreclosures, actual foreclosures versus new REO listings and then determine what a shadow inventory might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have, because we're able to match against the MLS, we can see, and then we're getting the REO data from public records, we can match those two together and see where there's, which REOs are listed. And I mean, nationwide, we're still showing 15 to 20%, only 15 to 20% of the REOs are listed. There's various reasons for that. Even if you go to the Fannie Mae reports and Freddie Mac, they say the same thing. I mean, they acknowledge that only, I believe it's about 20% of their REOs are listed, and they give a whole list of reasons why. But the fact remains that there are still a lot of REOs that are not listed for sale.
Can I ask you a follow-up? Don't
Yeah.
you think that impacts the actual increase in sales prices artificially?
Yes.
These prices of these houses on the market, don't you think that 7% is going to be either flat or even negative?
Potentially, although the volume, we do show 500,000 REOs nationwide that have not been sold that need to be absorbed by the market. We're at a sales pace of about over 5 million a year. So that's a tenth of that. It seems like that could be absorbed actually now fairly well into the market. When you look at the national picture now, that could be different in local markets. There may be concentrations of these unlisted REOs, shadow inventory, that will hit and will cause at least a slowdown in home price appreciation, if not a dip. So where foreclosure starts and auctions are rebounding, I've alluded to this a little bit. Does anybody want to shout out where they think we see a rebound in foreclosure activity, foreclosure starts?
Sure, Florida.
Florida?
Florida.
Yeah. Well, let's look at it. And Maryland. Maryland is actually at the top of the list. Someone mentioned that earlier. This is from the month of June, and we saw this continue in July. Maryland foreclosure starts were actually up to 275% This is year-over-year increase. So there's these markets where foreclosure has been held back. We've kept the state legislatures and courts have tried to keep a lid on foreclosures, but now we're seeing that boil over and they can't keep a lid on it forever. That's the case in Maryland, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. Florida is actually a little bit ahead of the curve. We have seen rebounding foreclosure starts in Florida, but now the pig is moving through the python, and now where we're seeing the surge in foreclosure activity in Florida is in the second stage, where the properties are actually being scheduled for auction. And that'll be the next slide. I wanted to throw Oregon up here, because we're showing a 59,000% increase in foreclosure starts there, and you might be wondering, is that what's going on? But the issue in Oregon is because of state legislation there, the banks had to pull way back in foreclosure activity, and now instead of doing non-judicial foreclosures, they're actually switching over to judicial foreclosures, and that's why you see this huge spike in, and that's mostly now list pendants being filed in Oregon before they were using judicial or the non-judicial process. Yes, sir.
Does that uptick be partially caused by failure of modifications to actually foreclose?
Yes, I think that's part of it. Is that, you know, for instance, in Maryland, you had this whole mediation law that took effect in August 2010 that required lenders to go through mediation and offer modification to homeowners, and maybe that worked for a little while, but now some of those are just inevitable foreclosures that need to happen. So that, yes, I absolutely think that's happening. This is the scheduled foreclosure auctions in Florida. Those are up 100% year over year in June. Illinois up 65%. Washington State is another one. Arkansas and Wisconsin are in there as well. So yeah, this is addressing your question. There's this pent-up foreclosure activity that's finally coming through. And then I do think that maybe rising prices are helping. The lenders say, okay, well, we've held back on foreclosing because it actually doesn't make financial sense for us to do so. But now that home prices are rising, that lifts all boats, and they say, well, we'll go ahead and foreclose because we can actually get more out of that property. The implications are now that there's been these public notices filed, the homeowner, the clock is ticking for a lot of these homeowners, especially with the scheduled auctions. They have that date that may be 2 or 3 months down the road, but they have that date where they're going to lose the property if they don't act. And so that is definitely an implication, at least in these areas where we're seeing those increases. And a way to leverage this trend is to find these people who are in a situation where they're motivated to do a short sale. This is our advanced search on our website, and so you can filter by a lot of different things, including the property type, the value, the equity in the property. You know, some agents may want to find properties that have equity versus negative equity. And then you can filter by the auction date. So if you want to find homeowners where there's a pending auction date coming up in the next 30, 60, 90 days, you can do that. And also, if they're in bank, you can check if they're already listed for sale. You can filter those out. If they have a bankruptcy filing, you can filter those out as well, or filter them in. And then another piece of RealtyTrack that we've added that you may not be aware of is you can actually download these, rather than just doing searches for individual properties on our website. You can do mass downloads of the data and create mailing lists of homeowners who are exactly in your target area, and have potentially an auction date coming up, and you can download that into an Excel spreadsheet and create a mailing list out of that. Okay, zombie foreclosures. Have you guys heard? How many have heard this term, or is it just a fun term that not too many? Okay. Well, Florida has the most of these zombie foreclosures, and these are properties that I think it's just a funny name to talk about a slice of the potential short sale market that could be more highly motivated than others, because these are homes, the foreclosure start has been filed, it's in foreclosure, but the homeowner, by cross-referencing our data with the post office, we've determined this homeowner has actually left the property and has moved on. And this tends to happen in the states with the lengthy foreclosure process, in places like Florida, where we do show a 900-day gap from the foreclosure start to the foreclosure completion. There's 55,000 of these vacant, they're basically vacant foreclosures. And by metro area, Chicago has the most, Miami has the second most, New York, Tampa, Orlando are the top 5, Jacksonville business. So there's a lot of Florida markets in here with a lot of these zombie foreclosures. The state, this is just by percentage. Indiana actually has the highest, of all foreclosures, over 50% are over 30% are vacant in Oregon. Nevada has over 28%, Washington. So this is a problem, I think, and nationwide there's more than, so there's about 800,000 total properties in the foreclosure process. 167,000 of them nationwide are vacant, that's 20%. And these are, in looking into these, and maybe you guys have, I'm sure you guys have stories about this too, these may be homeowners who just, they got that foreclosure notice, they assume they're going to lose the property, they walk away, move on with their lives, and one of the issues that comes back to bite them is all of a sudden they start getting bills for the property taxes, if the city is fining them for not keeping up the property, they're getting those bills. And the opportunity here is, these are homeowners in my mind who have basically raised their hands and said, I don't want to hold on to this property. I'm moving on with my life. And also, on the other side of the coin, you're dealing with lenders who aren't in a rush to foreclose. Their property has been sitting there for some time and they have not completed the foreclosure process even though the homeowner is left. So to me, this is a slice of the distressed market that would be highly motivated to do a short sale. And you can identify those on Realty Track through that product I was showing earlier, the download, what we call the mega download. There's a filter on there where you can specify where the properties, what properties that are vacant, and so that does that for you. Yes, sir?
In your database, do you have their forwarding address, their email address?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we are cross-referencing with the post office, and so in the majority of cases, they actually do. I was kind of surprised at this, but they fill out a national change of address form, and so we have the new mailing address, which is obviously key. I'm sure you guys have ways to do that on your own, but we're doing it for you there so you can find those homeowners who are and where they are, because that is key to contact them. REOs are disappearing, so we'll get a little bit more dive a little more deep into REOs right now. Do any of you deal with REOs in here? Raise your hand. Okay. Listing REOs. So yeah, we're seeing at least nationwide REOs are way down. They're not quite back to pre-housing crisis levels, but they're getting there. They're at a 72-month low in April. There are some exceptions, just like there are some exceptions on the foreclosure start side. Florida is one of those where REOs are still increasing. Some of these smaller states have bigger percentage increases, but Florida has bigger volume. Maryland as well, Washington, New Jersey. A lot of these states that are in this slower foreclosure process are still dealing with increasing REOs. But we are seeing that, this may be hard to see, but the red bars are sales of REOs, not just new REOs, but actual sales to third parties, whereas the yellow bars are short sales. And we can see, especially in the last year and a half, that short sales have really started jumping up higher than REO sales. So we're shifting still to further upstream to dispose of these properties. And one of the reasons, this is deeds in lieu are up as well. Deeds in lieu of foreclosure were up 39% nationwide in 2012 compared to 2011. Now, full disclosure, the numbers are way smaller in terms of deeds in lieu of foreclosure. We're showing, I believe the number was about 35,000 total deeds in lieu of foreclosure in 2012 compared to 670,000 REOs. But that is, in some states especially, those numbers are up, and that is one way a property is basically not going the traditional REO route, but still getting back to the bank. REO is down but not out. We do anticipate this in some of these states with the recent rise in foreclosure starts. That's going to translate into REOs down the road. More of the pig working through the pipeline. And then rising home prices could again give the banks motivation to go through that REO process rather than just agreeing to a short sale up front. We talked about that earlier. And then to your question back there about finding unlisted REOs, you can do that specifically on Realty Track in your area. You can do a search. This is in Detroit. And I specifically here I'm looking for only listed REOs, but you could do the opposite and say I want unlisted REOs and see the ones that are not yet listed for sale.
Does that mean you have to contact the bank in order to get the listing?
Yes. Yeah, at that point, the bank owns it, but they haven't listed for sale. There may be reasons for that. For instance, in Michigan, there's a redemption period. Most states don't have that redemption period, but yeah. At that point, if you want that listing, and honestly, it is a difficult, I'm sure many of you guys, folks can attest to this, it's difficult to do that, to work with the banks. They have their process of getting these properties from REO to listed, but persistent agents can get in there and get those listings. Flipping, institutional investors. Are any of you folks working in this arena at all? Okay, a few of you. Great. Great. I just think this is interesting. You know, we're starting to see with rising home prices come the opportunists, the flippers. We're seeing a big spike here in the first year, and those flips are up first of this year, up 17% from a year ago in the second quarter. Some states you're seeing flipping up a lot more than others. Actually, it's you see Michigan up a lot, Florida's up 44%, but then you see California's down 20%. They had a lot of flips last year, but the home prices went up so fast and got so high so fast, the flippers moved on to lower price markets in 2013.
You should have Washington, D.C. in there. It's almost impossible to find a property.
Yeah, I don't have D.C. in here. But Maryland up, and where's Virginia? Oh yeah, Virginia is also up. And then here are the metro areas. But I do think it's interesting that these flippers are, there's like this movement across the country. Places like Phoenix are kind of tapped out, and you actually see flips going down. A lot of the California markets, Los Angeles, Las Vegas flips are down even. But then you see places like Omaha, New York that aren't traditional flipping meccas where these flippers are moving toward. And a lot of that flipping is driven by what we call institutional investors. Folks who are coming in and buying in lots of properties. Some of these are flippers, but then a lot of these institutional investors are buying as rentals, as you guys know that whole phenomenon. But they're buying from the flippers, so that's helping to feed the flipping frenzy. And this is a graph just showing that institutional investor activity. We're identifying these as anybody who's purchased 10 or more properties in 12 months. And they're up 16% from a year ago. By metro area, similar thing, Phoenix is down, but a lot of the other markets are up. Phoenix was like the first place that the institutional investors went to. These are people like Blackstone and Colony Capital. But now they're moving on to other markets like Atlanta and Tampa and Miami. And so a tip here is, my thought, and maybe someone can tell me how those of you who raise your hands, how you're leveraging this trend. But what I'm hearing from agents is you want to find these folks, these flippers, these investors, as well as the flipper investors who tend to be more of the mom and pop individuals, but also then the institutional investors. These are the folks who are active in this market, who are buying, actively buying, and if you can tap into that and make yourself useful for those folks, then you got a repeat client over and over again. And so one of the strategies is to find, a lot of these folks are buying at the foreclosure auction. That's one of their main sources to buy because they have cash. And the foreclosure auction represents less competition. So you can find a foreclosure auctions in your area and go attend and start getting to know those folks. Yes?
How much effect has the big things like Warren Buffett and these who are buying with notes and then making deals with people, so we never see them in the quote distress picture?
Yeah.
But they're there,
That's a whole nother presentation. But yeah, I think we've actually kind of labeled that the ghost inventory. All these non-performing loans that have been sold off and are still out there and nobody's quite sure when those are going to come through. But and then I think Warren, it's interesting you mentioned Warren Buffett, because I do think he also influenced this institutional investor trend that we're seeing, because he, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, got on CNBC and he said, if I had the logistics to manage the properties, I would buy 1,000 distressed properties and hold them as rentals. He said the numbers make sense. And soon after that, that graph, that purple graph I had, that's when those numbers started to take off. You can also promote yourself on Realty Track. We have a lot of these investors coming to our site to look for these foreclosures, and so if you're promoted on there, you're the agent, the local expert that they're going to go to.
Do you track the banks that transition non-performing notes to the hedge funds?
We don't track that. No. That's a more difficult piece. The public records are not quite so easy to get on that. All right, so I think I only have a couple of minutes, but we talked about this a little bit, but just the point, I wanted to make a point that there is this transition happening, especially in some states more than others, where folks who are underwater now, in 6 months or a year, will no longer be underwater, no longer be short sale. But, and we're showing those actually, based on the current rate of appreciation nationwide, there could be as many as 4.5 million homes that move from a place of little or no equity to a place of at least 20% equity, so that they would presumably be able to sell at that point. And that's if home prices rise another 10%. So that's coming. This is just home prices. They're going up. I won't spend too much time on that. But here's an example of an agent who actually is a member of Realty Track, and this is an Inman News article. She did exactly, and this is a point I made earlier, she reached out to this homeowner who was underwater and offered to list her home. The homeowner said, no, I don't want to do a short sale. But then several months later, after a leap in home prices, she pulled off the sale. And it wasn't a short sale, it was an equity sale. And so this is a strategy to kind of bridge that gap between, as short sales transition to a more normal market. You don't want to all of a sudden ignore those homeowners who are in trouble, because even if they don't do a short sale now, they may do an equity sale later. All right, so Boomerang Buyers, I don't think I have any time left, but I mentioned this earlier. The point is, we're going to have, and these could have been short sales you did a year or two ago. People who you helped them sell their home via short sale, they could now qualify as a buyer again under the new HUD guidelines. And so if I did a quick look at the numbers, based on the old HUD guidelines, there were 4.6 million folks who had either completed foreclosure or done a short sale before 2010. And so that's a big number already. But then if you add in the people who are now added to the pool because of the change in the guidelines, you have another 2.4 million homes that have either done a short sale or been foreclosed on that are now potential listings for you. And you go back to your list of short sales you've done over the last few years and reach out to those people and say, hey, did you know you actually could buy again in some cases? So, last slide is just some resources. I mentioned the stats and trends at the very beginning, where you can go in for free and type in any area. We have a lot of reports that we put out under realtytrack.com/content. The trends are under Trend Center. And then we got a great deal for you guys. Lee has negotiated to get 67% off our membership. It's usually $49.95 for a basic agent membership, which includes access to the nationwide database of foreclosures, and it does allow you to download up to 300 records per month. You can get more if you want to. And so basically that's we're saying $199 for a full year, 12 months for the price of 4 months. And unfortunately, our sales team wasn't able to be here today. But if you want to get this deal, we'll honor it. There's one of two ways you can do that. You can call this number here, and I'll have this number in the back. And there's someone, this is a dedicated line for members of this conference that you can call to get this deal, or you can leave me your business card and we'll follow up with you and you can get the deal. And so I thank you very much for your time. I don't know that we have time for questions, but since, oh, there he is. Probably not. But thank you very much. And I'd love to take your questions now.
We have time. Hello. We have time for a few questions.
Okay. Great.
So, does anybody have any additional questions here?
On
For
your-
Daren?
On your program that you're offering, what do we get extra that you wouldn't normally get?
You get a discount on the price on this.
No, as far as the data.
You get, it's the full membership. It's what someone would get if they pay $49.95 a month. And that includes full access to nationwide data at the address level, and then also the ability to download records. And then we do have where you can advertise yourself as a local expert, and discounts on those that varies a lot from area to area and how many users we have in that area, so you can call about that.
How many of you are on the Monster Marketing Program already? Okay. So for those of you that are on Monster and are going to be and are actually using that or getting ready to use it, this is the best source of data to find out where you should get those packages to. So for those of you that are thinking about doing that, or you're looking for very specific target marketing, this is where you would get the data to find that. Any other questions?
Yeah, for the properties like in Virginia where they get the notice of default, how quickly do you get the data? And I mean, the county doesn't necessarily have that data 60 days out.
Yeah, I mean, we get what's available in public records. I don't know the exact time frame in Virginia, but we do have people collecting that every day and uploading it, so it is updated daily. And we're tracking also when the auctions are postponed, which is pretty frequent. So you'll see if an auction date was pushed back.
Can you search for that?
For updated?
Yeah,
Or,
can you search for an auction date that's been postponed?
you can't search like that, but you can, if you're interested, you can set up email alerts. So if you're interested in properties that have auction dates, we'll email you if that auction date has changed.
Okay, because by the time we have the auction date, it's usually 2 weeks out, you know,